Hello and welcome. Today is May 1st, 2013. We're sitting here in a room full of Joliet Rotarians at an event we call a Fireside Chat. The Fireside Chat is an event that Joliet Rotary has held for many years with an intention to orientate new members to the ways and traditions and customs of the Joliet Rotary Club. Now, you can't see, but in the room there are several dozen other Rotarians here with us, and along with the panel here that you're going to meet in just a few minutes. But the Joliet Rotary Club wanted to bring this event to you via this video so that you too can see what we have seen as one of the benefits of membership in Rotary. So welcome, and we hope you enjoy looking at the history, the traditions, and the information that we're about to share with you today. So with that, I'll turn it over to our moderator for the evening, Mr. Larry Johnson. Larry?
Thank you, Tim. President Tim, our current president for the Joliet Rotary Club. And with me is a distinguished panel of individuals, each of which have been a past president of our Joliet Rotary and combined 174 years of Rotary history with them. So on my far right is George Buck, 39 years with the Joliet Rotary. Next to him, Dr. Pete Nichols, 45 years. Next to me, Deb Condotti, 23 years. To my left, Ed Dollinger, 26 years. Then Mike Rittof, 14 years, and our current president, Tim, with 10 years. Myself with 17, so we're glad you all agreed to be a part of this today. And let's start right off with you, George. George, could you kind of tell us, our audience here and the people that are viewing, a brief history of how did Rotary get started?
Well, Rotary International started in 1905 in Chicago with a young lawyer who was looking for fellowship. He was looking for people to talk to. Chicago was a rough and tumble town. And he invited three other, a lawyer, a coal dealer, well, three people, and they would rotate between the offices every week, bring their lunch and meet. And then it expanded because they wanted to do service, and they were interested in international service. And Paul Harris, which was that gentleman's name, was very vocal in trying to get this going. It moved pretty quickly because of the way the Rotary brought in the professional person or a businessman from a unique industry. You wouldn't have all lawyers or all coal dealers or all insurance salesmen or et cetera. And it was interesting, and they brought in people to the Chicago group, and it got big quite a bit. The fellowship was a good portion of the meetings, and also they wanted service. They wanted to offer service to early Chicago. So that's how it started. It was also ecumenical to a certain degree. It was both a Protestant, a Catholic, and there was a Jewish gentleman on the first four. And so with that, that was how they started off.
And you mentioned Paul Harris as the founder. Now there's a Paul Harris Fellows. Could you tell us what a Paul Harris Fellow is and where that comes from?
Paul Harris Fellow is when you give $1,000 to the Rotary Foundation, which is a separate not-for-profit organization run by Foundation Council. And when you start with your $1,000, you become a Paul Harris Fellow. There's levels, $1,000 up level, and there's $100 that you can give every year as a sustaining member. And a lot of Rotarians a lot of clubs start off their member with $100, then you give $100 a year until you hit that Paul Harris Fellowship. You get a special pin, and as you go up, you get other pins and awards and things like that. So, and that money goes to the foundation.
The obvious question is, what do they do with that money?
Well, they actually they have a unique, they don't do anything with it for 3 years. They earn interest on it, but that's the mechanism of it. What they really do is they've gone out in different, well, since 1905, they've had many projects, local in Chicago, but also international. More recently, what we would be aware of would be going after polio to vaccinate everyone, all the children in the world against polio. But they have large water projects, and they've had, one of the original projects right in Chicago was getting some outhouses or
in the early
bathrooms
days.
in the early
Not
days.
Recently.
Not
right.
recently.
Okay.
I jumped back. Sorry about that.
So we talk about avenues of service, and we talk about international service. What does that mean to a Rotarian?
Well, international service, the funds would possibly could come through the Rotary Foundation. The club could raise funds, and in our club, we've done many projects. Recently, we've done water projects. The Spacia family has gone over, and they have have assisted drilling wells in Malawi, in Africa, and that's funded by our club, but also from grants. So the international part, the other part of international fellowship would be the idea of being understanding and peace, which we don't maybe hit so much right here in Joliet, but Rotary has a big peace initiative in terms of teaching at different universities the idea of spreading understanding peace among students in the world.
Very good. Pete, tell us a little bit about our club here in Joliet. How was it born?
Well, Joliet Rotary first existed as a study club in 1910. One of its members, George Lennon, was greatly impressed with a business course he had taken in Chicago on business building, efficiency, and character development. He arranged to have a speaker come to Joliet to give the program to the 16-member club. And after the course was completed, they again thought so much of it, they wanted to continue the fellowship and all, and decided to have weekly meetings and also to discuss and expand the course. Each member spent a week acting as chairman of the group, and the members began to refer to themselves as the Joliet Rotary Club. Now, that was a coincidence because they didn't know about Rotary International until 1911, and they had attempted to join Rotary International and were firmly turned down because the bylaws prohibited any club being formed in the city under 75,000. At that time, Joliet had a population of about 40,000. In June 11th and 14, 1913, the Rotary Club launched the Joliet Business Show and Efficiency Congress. It was a smashing success with both the business world and the community. It was highly publicized in the Tribune and other papers. Everything was completely free, which was unusual in that time. And the total amount that was spent was $150
On this expo.
with everything which members paid voluntarily. It was held in an empty building, a new empty building, the Adam Arcade, and that was free, and it was good publicity for the building. But the publicity caught the attention of the Chicago Rotary, and they sent a delegation down here headed by Chesley Perry, who was the secretary, and came to give the group a critical examination. And they themselves were highly impressed. And so impressed that they requested a meeting at the end of the Congress, Congress that was given with the Rotary Club, is to discuss as to how they could include them in Rotary International. And this went on, and in the minutes of the Joliet Club at June 24th, 1913, show that a motion was made to apply for membership in Rotary International, and the motion passed unanimously.
So as I understand it, here Joliet at the time would not have been allowed into Rotary, but because of this study club that called itself Rotary, had done such a tremendous job with this exposition that the entire international organization changed the rules, and we were the first club in?
You're exactly right. Joliet was accepted into Rotary International, the Rotary International Convention in Buffalo in August 1913. We were officially chartered August 1st, 1913, and certified at the convention and officially inducted into Rotary International on September 1st, 1913. We became Rotary Club number 78, and the first Rotary Club from a city smaller than 75,000.
And that's why we're here today celebrating 100 years.
We have a picture of the membership tree, the Rotary membership tree, which sprouts many, many other clubs.
That's terrific. Now, this four-way test thing, you hear Rotarians talking about a four-way test. What is that all about?
Well, in 1932, in the Depression years, Herbert Taylor was asked to take over a near bankrupt company, the Club Aluminum Company. And this was a last-ditch effort to more or less prevent bankruptcy. And Taylor wrote a code of ethics, the four-way test, for all employees. They were going to follow it in their business and professional lives. It was a guide for the sales, production, advertising, and all relations with the dealers and customers. It turned out that the company became successful, and it was basically credited to this simple philosophy, the four-way test. In 1943, the Rotary International Board voted to officially adopt the four-way test. In 1954, Taylor became the I want to say RI president instead of Rotary International, and donated the copyright of the test to Rotary. It's been translated into languages of more than 100 countries. It's appeared on umbrellas in Japan, billboards, gymnasiums, schoolrooms, public parks, halls of government, walls of business, and many other places. And very uniquely, Buzz Aldrin planted a four-way test pin on the moon's surface.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Well, since we're taping this, you ought to tell us, what is the four-way test?
It's four parts. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Is it beneficial to all concerned? And thankfully, I remembered it.
And really, this is the, if I understand, this is the test we should apply to our own dealings, personal, business, and private, whenever we're having to make a decision.
It gives us a guide to live our life in a very good way.
Okay, so there's a pretty interesting story about Joliet Rotarians and the Depression. Could you kind of talk about, and not the most recent, the historic Depression? Could you kind of tell us that story?
Well, when you talk about depressions, we talk about the Great Depression. This was in 1933, at the very height of the Depression. And Joliet was in a desperate situation. They had no money, jobs weren't available, banks were closed, cash wasn't available anywhere, and people were couldn't pay their bills or the taxes. And the public employees and teachers were being paid in tax warrants and teachers' orders. But they could not redeem them because their cash wasn't available anywhere. And the grocers and merchants who took these warrants as payment for necessities, they faced their empty shelves and they had no cash to restock. And Mayor Hennessy took the problem to 10 local merchants. All of them were Rotarians. And these men, along with a few other merchants, formed the Joliet Clearing Association. They decided to print script that would be redeemable for cash. They had to buy special paper with a watermark so that it would prevent counterfeiting. The ink also had to be special so that it couldn't be erased to change the amount of the bill. And the script was issued in amounts of 25 cents, 50 cents, $1, $5, and $10. There were 15 trustees in Joliet that guaranteed the script as lawful money. 11 of the trustees were Rotarians, and they guaranteed this script at a tremendous risk, high personal risk. The next step was to find cash to redeem these warrants and teachers' orders. The Deaton Kennedy Company and the Farrell Manufacturing Company were still in business. Clayt Farrell and Martin Kennedy, also Rotarians, agreed to pay 1/3 of their payrolls in script and send the rest in cash to the Joliet Clearing Association.
So they would have the cash to back the script.
That's where they got the cash. But the employees who received the script didn't believe it was worth anything, so they immediately got rid of it. But in turn, the merchants that were given the cash to continue in business. Actually, it prevented many businesses from not going out of business. And about a year later, the Joliet Clearing Association closed with a profit of about $1,000, which they then distributed to the various charities.
Boy, that's goes to that motto of service above self, doesn't it? Well, thanks, Pete. Debbie Condotti. George talked about international service, but what does the Joliet Rotary Club do regarding community service?
Well, that was a great lead-in from Pete, because of course if there was any money left, it was distributed to charity. And I love Rotary, it matches my values, and I work in community service. So I just absolutely love the special projects that I've been part of, that all of us here have been part of, and Rotarians before us, and hopefully in the future. And those have included so many. But one of the projects I know when I entered the club that I learned about very quickly was the project that the club adopted with the YMCA here in Joliet. Rotary was very instrumental in the development of the field and many aspects of the facilities.
That's
of the
out there
YMCA.
on Humboldt,
On Humboldt
right?
Road.
That many local residents and citizens have the opportunity to take advantage of.
Right.
Rotary funded that, am I correct?
Yes, and YMCA's today, and certainly during that time, were a hub of the community for a lot of family services, youth services, and it was just a perfect match for Rotary. But then we didn't stop there. We decided that we can raise funds, we can roll up our sleeves and do some hands-on work in the greater Joliet community. And so we developed an annual raffle that we've carried on historically. The proceeds have funded many projects. Certainly one that I'm from Easter Seals. We've done a recent project with United Cerebral Palsy on an accessible playground. A couple of playgrounds in the past that have been great additions to our community, working with the homeless shelters, working with all different social service organizations. And then in addition, developing scholarships for students that are graduating local community high schools. And the list goes on and on and on. So we raise money through that primary project, and we have this fun thing that we do every week. We have fines.
Okay.
You know, that we're supposed to.
How do you get fined?
You get fined, you know, we have the Sergeant of Arms that's part of our, kind of our club agenda, you know, so to speak. And if you get the right answer, I suppose you're relinquished from the fine. But the idea is to raise some money in a fun way and to distribute those funds through a process at the end of our club year. And there's many awards that have gone out to Red Cross, and you could go on and on. There's an application process, of course. And then what I also like about Rotary is, as was mentioned, people come together from different vocations, and we all have classifications. And together, when we bring that knowledge and personality to things, and then you combine that with a community service project, whether, again, that's a fundraiser or a hands-on, it just brings out the best in people. And we've done so many of those. We've done a great avoidable blindness clinic at what's now called Presence St. Joseph Medical Center for years. I was talking with one of our newer Rotarians about that project. The good feel to it, the food bank, when the food trucks
sure.
came up and Rotarians were there rolling up their sleeves, distributing those products. For years, we rang the bell for the Salvation Army. That's the fun camaraderie, too, along with raising the money.
Sounds to me like a lot of work involved, but does fellowship grow out of that? I mean, if I'm a new Rotarian and I haven't been involved in any of the service activities, is that a great way to meet other Rotarians? Or?
Well, I can tell you, I just have a special place in my heart for everyone that rang the bell with me all through the years.
Many cold days.
Because it would be very, very cold days. Absolutely. I mean, you get to know people in a different sort of way that you would never get to know them. And it's delightful. It's just
Wonderful.
delightful to be in Rotary in that way.
So we've talked about international service, we've talked about community service, the beginnings, and next we're going to head into vocational service. Okay, so we've learned a lot so far about Rotary, and we're going to head to the folks sitting to my left. Again, all past presidents of our Joliet Rotary, and first is Ed. And Ed, what I want to ask you about is, Debbie had mentioned something about classification system of Rotary. Can you talk a little bit about classification system? and what that means to us in Rotary?
Sure, Larry. I think the classification system is very unique to Rotary, and the Joliet Rotary Club is made up of a tremendous cross-section of individuals throughout Joliet area. And it's unique. It's a diverse group of people. We have many different interests and perspectives, and the classification system allows us to do that. We don't want to become a club of just one particular occupation. So it was put in place years ago. I remember when I joined Joliet Rotary 26 years ago, actually George Buck was my sponsor here, and he said, well, let me see how many other financial advisors are in the club, and he checked. George Lloyd was in, and he actually have to give permission to allow me in the club. Now, it's not quite as restrictive nowadays, but it makes for creating a great diversity of people with from many different walks of life.
So what you're saying is we literally go out and try to get people from different classifications, bankers, lawyers, accountants, financial planners, not-for-profit. Is that right?
Yes.
That's how that...
All different types of people from all different vocations, if you will. They bring a different perspective, ideas, and they all want to give back to the community, get involved, and serve their community.
So it's a great networking for the people involved there, too. Tell me about another area of service. We talked about the various areas of service, vocational service. Now, what is that all about in Rotary?
Well, one of the objects of Rotary is to encourage and foster the ideal of service. And as Rotarians, we really have the opportunity and responsibility to provide service back to our community. And we can do that through our vocations in many ways. Debbie just mentioned a little bit about our blindness program that we had, and Dr. Morimoto really promoted that. That was his expertise, and he brought 30, 40 volunteer Rotarians together for that screening those days over how many years. So it's Rotarians using their expertise in their careers or vocations and providing service back to the community.
That's terrific. And don't we carry that down to children and high school age children and young people in terms of like sharing vocational experiences and life experiences with them? Talk a little bit about what our club in particular does for high school students, for example.
Probably one of our main vocational programs is our Youth Leadership Conference. And we host that every March, every year. We've been doing it for 16 years now. And we invite students from our local high schools, our 3 local high schools, to attend. And the 4 topics that we cover during that conference is on leadership, communications, decision-making, and ethics. And there's 16 speakers, all Rotarians, and there's 4 on each topic. And they discuss the topic and how it relates to their everyday work that they do and how it would apply to the students. And I think it's been very valuable over the years. And as I said, we've been doing it for 16 years, and I think it has a tremendous impact.
It's a great opportunity for these high school students to interact with leaders in our community, too, right?
Definitely.
I mean, would
Definitely.
we agree? And what is this Interact? I've heard about an Interact Club. What is that?
The Interact Club, that is Rotary International's service club for youth. And we have one here that we sponsored here in Joliet, at Joliet West. It's a group of students, very high-energy students, working on a lot of different projects, about approximately 30 students, and they're working on local projects here in Joliet area, and also some international projects. So again, we're trying to instill the whole service above self and giving back to your community.
And I keep getting a theme here. It's both give back to your community and be aware of the greater world out there, too, and be of service there. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, I mean, there's so much need out there, and we have a responsibility as citizens, as Rotarians, people that live in this community, to give back and get involved and help others.
Thanks. Mike Rittof,
Yes.
tell us about this avenue of club service. What's that all about?
Well, we talked a lot today, Larry, about fellowship. And club service really focuses on strengthening fellowship within our club and also ensuring that we have a effective functioning club. To be an effective club, you really need to have an engaged membership and also a well-trained and committed membership to the ideals of Rotary.
How do we engage our members?
Well, the best way to become engaged is to become involved in the club. And there's many ways to be able to do that. One of them is to sign up for a committee. And I'll just run through a list of committees that our club has real quickly. We have a program committee. At every meeting, we have a speaker. And we have some guidelines as to what that speaker should talk about and that sort of thing. So we have a committee that kind of reviews possible programs and discusses that. We have a greeter committee. We always have an invocation at each meeting. And so we have a committee that schedules the people that give the invocation. We have a sick and welfare committee. They kind of monitor the club membership, and if someone's ill or has had a death in their family, we send condolences or get well wishes to them. We have a four-way test project. We talked about the four-way test, but we actually go into our schools and talk with the fourth graders about the four-way test, and we also give them dictionaries to use. And so we have a committee that organizes that, so that's another way to get involved. We talked about the raffle. We also have a committee that organizes the raffle. We talked about scholarships. We have a scholarship committee. We talked about the sergeant-at-arms and the fines. We have a committee that we call them welfare grants that administers that. We also recognize some of the seniors within our community that kind of exemplify the ideals of Rotary through service. And we call that the Silver Eagle Award.
Now, are these Rotarians that you
No,
honor?
these are just people within the community that maybe through our business connections, we know people that volunteer their time and do a lot of the same things that we as Rotarians do with service above self that maybe aren't recognized or kind of fall under the limelight. So we have a program to recognize those individuals.
Sounds like a lot of services going on. Do we ever have fun? Do we party or anything?
Yes. So we do have a lot of fellowship events, and one of the fellowship events that we're doing is this Fireside Chat. While we're talking about the history of Rotary, we also have a little food and drink to go along with it.
I told you all we were having fun. You didn't think so.
And we'll have some follow-up fun when we're done here. And that's the importance of fellowship is the networking opportunities that Rotary brings. Through my experience with Rotary, I've had the opportunity to meet people and cross their paths that I probably would have never had I not been a Rotarian. But some of the functions that we do is we have we used to have a family picnic. Hopefully we'll bring that back. And Ed's happens to have a family farm that has a pumpkin patch. So we have a family event. We have the Slammer State or Silver Cross Field where the Slammers play. But we've also had social events there. We have we call them a social event a few times a year. It's like a business after hours where we meet at a local establishment in town.
Yes.
And have some adult beverages and some appetizers. And once again, it's a great way because when you come to a Rotary meeting, it's somewhat structured, so you don't have a lot of time to visit with the different people, and this gives you the opportunity to do that. A couple other things that we've done in the past, we've actually done an architectural cruise downtown Chicago, where we've toured some of the sites in Chicago and then had dinner. Another big event we talked about, Rotary was formed in 1905. In 2005, the Centennial celebration of Rotary was in Chicago, and we had several hundred Rotarians from around the world come to Joliet, and we hosted them at different venues. It created not only fellowship within our members organizing those events, but also we had fellowship with our fellow Rotarians from around the world. Another great way for fellowship, not only within our club, but